Hello, and thank you for joining us today. SnapOn Software and CareSoft would like to welcome you to our webinar, Transforming Government Processes with Secure Forms and Workflow Automation. My name is Caroline, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. To tell you a little bit about CareSoft, we are the trusted government IT solutions provider supporting federal, state, local government, education, healthcare, and private sector industries. We connect our customers across the US and Canada with thousands of technology vendors, resellers, system integrators, and managed service providers to deliver a comprehensive range of solutions and services to meet organizations' needs. CareSoft holds a wide variety of schedules, contracts, and purchasing agreements that streamline and simplify the IT procurement process. As the master government aggregator for our vendor, reseller, and integrator partners, CareSoft has assembled a comprehensive IT solutions portfolio that includes products and services across multiple technology verticals to support organizations with mission-focused solutions for artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, records management, cyber workforce development, and more. I would now like to go ahead and introduce our speaker for today. Peter is the Director of GTM Sales and Client Solutions at SnapOn Software and has been delivering solutions on the Microsoft platform for 15 years with a focus on document management and business applications. He brings extensive experience working across the public and private sectors, helping organizations deliver digital workspace solutions on the Microsoft cloud. With that, I'm going to hand the presentation over. Peter, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you everyone for joining today. I'm just going to take over screen sharing, so please just bear with me. We'll start today with just a few slides to introduce myself and to introduce SnapOn Software on our Forms product, which we're going to talk about today. So just as a core agenda, we're going to be focusing on how government organizations can modernize processes in SharePoint using our forms and workflow solutions. We'll show a few key features like our cascading lookup, some of our validations, external form capabilities, and the majority of today's presentation will be a live demonstration as well. As Caroline said, feel free to post questions during the session. We'll try and answer them all at the end of the session in a Q&A. So us as an organization, you may not have heard of us before. You may have previously dealt with one of our other brands, such as Quizcom. We are a new brand. We've existed in the market for about 12 months, but the history of the organization is much longer. So we've been working and delivering solutions on the Microsoft and SharePoint platform, both in the cloud and online for over 15 years now. So that's us as an organization. We build solutions for collaboration, security and compliance on the Microsoft platforms, but also build some solutions for Oracle NetSuite as well. There are three key product portfolios which make up our brand. The collaboration products, formerly Quizcom. This is where we're going to focus our time today. So we're going to be focused on this product ecosystem. We deliver collaboration solutions here for both SharePoint on-premises and Microsoft 365 to help empower better productivity and collaborative working on those platforms. The second brand is Provision Point for our governance product. So that's uniquely just for Microsoft 365 and helps organizations with provisioning and lifecycle management for Teams, SharePoint, Microsoft 365 groups. And finally, we have our solutions, which are industry specific ERP solutions under the SST brand. We're talking about Microsoft today, though. So our product portfolio in the Microsoft space covers our forms product, which I'm going to show you today, which is all about intelligent forms for implementing complex logic and workflow very easily to help automate business processes. We have some other products as well. So we have our DataView Plus product, which is a data visualization tool, which helps with the visualization and aggregation of data, such as organizational charts, calendars. We have our CMS 365 platform, which is helping organizations with documentation and how they capture product, technical, organizational knowledge in a structured way. And then, as I mentioned, for Microsoft 365, we have our governance solutions, Provision Point, which is our enterprise end-to-end lifecycle management solution for SharePoint and Teams. And then we have Audit, which helps administrators get an understanding of a Microsoft 365 environment, where there are risks, where there are significant storage being used. We work with a range of different organizations across government, local, national, agencies, and other large organizations who use our solutions on a daily basis. And we're supporting hundreds of thousands of users every single day using our products. I asked Caroline to just put a quick poll into the chat here, so hopefully we're going to be able to do that, because that will be really useful for me to get an idea of our audience before I go any deeper into what we're going to be talking about today. So trying to get an understanding from people and the attendees in terms of what you're currently using as your SharePoint environment. So are you using SharePoint Online? Are you using SharePoint Subscription Edition, an older version of SharePoint 2019 or earlier? Or are you not using SharePoint at all at the moment? So hopefully Caroline's going to be able to post that to everyone, and everyone's going to be able to complete that, and we'll just give you a minute to complete that. It just for the audience's benefits, we maintain feature parity across our different SharePoint versions. So with our Forms product, we support both online versions and on-premises versions, and that's a commitment which we're going to maintain to ensure feature parity moving forward, so that customers can use the environment which is best suited to their current status. Okay, so we'll move on, and I want to talk a little bit briefly about what we're going to show you today, and then we'll move into a demonstration. So our Forms product, what's it designed for? What features does it have? How can you use it? So it's built on top of SharePoint. It allows people to easily extend the native SharePoint forms with a number of different capabilities. So that includes custom layouts, workflow automation, business rules, external data connectivity, and public intake forms, external forms as well. And some common things which you can use it for: you can use it for leave requests, evaluations, registrations, facilities requests, procurement, assessments, applications, CapEx approval, any sort of process where potentially it was either dealt with as a paper form or using some legacy piece of software to manage that data. As I said today, you can use it both on premises and online. To give you an idea of what we actually do, so on your left-hand side here, you'll see this is what SharePoint looks like natively. So any of the people who are currently using SharePoint, this will give you an idea of what it currently looks like, and hopefully many people will find that familiar to them. Our forms can look like this. So they're multi-tab forms with complex layout capabilities, additional functionality like interdependent lookups, validations, as well as the ability to support multiple repeating items. So we can manage form layouts, we can manage column permissions, we can manage those interdependent lookups, we call them cascading lookups. We can manage child and related items with repeating those. We also have our own workflow module. So for many people who are currently using a legacy workflow solution, such as SharePoint workflows, or one provided by a third-party solution, we've got our own workflow engine built on top of SharePoint. This allows you to do things like allocate tasks, manage approvals, send email notifications, update records as it moves through different statuses and states within the workflow. The important thing to say, and why our solution is really strong for government, is the fact that we are doing this all within the context of your SharePoint environment. So whether that being your SharePoint on-premises environment, your SharePoint online environment, the security and the data remains with you. You're not sending that data off to a third-party service. It's not managed through somewhere where you've not got control. It's operating either within your own tenant or within your own secure Microsoft 365 environment. Lastly, we also have our secure external forms. So if, and in many scenarios, you need to capture data from external parties to initially bring into the process. Instead of that having to be done as an offline process, it can be done as an external process. So people fill that form in live through a web link, a QR code, embedding it on a web portal. And that data will flow directly into your SharePoint lists, and you can then deliver all of the other functionality with our forms, such as that validation, form layouts, and workflow automations based on those pieces of information which has been captured. So this is another key feature of our form solution. So with that, I didn't want to spend too long on a presentation, so hopefully that's given everyone a background in terms of who we are, the solutions which we offer, and the key benefits of our forms product, which is what we're going to talk about today. So with that, I'm going to move into a demonstration. I'm going to switch to my browser. And to start my demonstration today, I am using a user called Adele. So she represents a user who can come in and interact with our forms, but she's not one of the core designers of our forms. She's come to this SharePoint site, which is for financial policies, and she wants to raise a new CapEx request. So she can do that here. She can come in here and she can raise a new request. No, I'm staying within SharePoint, but I'm immediately opening one of our forms. I don't know if I've got one configured here, but I might have an example of what one would look like if it hadn't got one of our forms. So here's an example of a really basic list which doesn't have all the capability I'm going to show you. So you can see here the form itself is very flat. There's no interactivity. These fields, which have a department and a cost center, don't interact with each other. So if I select a specific department, it doesn't interact with the cost center. Whereas within our list, we've got a lot more configuration. Actually, the title is a non-editable field. I'm setting that automatically. The status is also set as new. I can't make any changes to that. I can come in here and select a department. So I can say, well, actually, this request is for operations. And then it will present me a list of cost centers specific to that department. If I go and change that, that options will be changed. So I can have all of that sort of control. That data can come from different locations. So it could come from a SharePoint list, which is what it's doing in this case. It could come from an external data source as well. And when I say external to SharePoint, but it might still be internal within your organization. So it might be a database or another service which you use within your organization, which has a master list of suppliers or cost centers or departments. This list here is just where I'm managing my cost centers. So I've got a series of different cost centers which I've allocated to specific departments. What that means is that drives, using our cascading lookup, this filtering capability. So based on the fact I've selected sales, the options here are limited for me. So I can go and put in a specific option here. I'm actually going to select operations because I've done a couple for sales. So I'm going to start to complete my form. Now I can save this form at this point. I can also go and complete the asset details. But I'm actually going to save it because I want to sort of show you what initially starts to happen. So you'll notice that this gets submitted to the system. It starts with the status of new. It's not got a total at the moment, and it's not got a title. If I give this a little refresh, you can see that it's gone and applied a naming convention, and we'll look at how that does that in a minute. If I come in here and edit my request a bit further, I can come back in and I can make some changes. So I can, for instance, come in here and say, well, what assets am I including within my request? So say maybe I'm requesting some equipment, so I need some laptops, and that has a certain value associated with it. And then I'm also going and selecting a car hire, yeah? And I want to go and put in another line. Notice how these are totaling, and also how I can go and add in more items here. So I can say, well, actually, I also need some let's say TVs for exhibitions. Okay, and then I can go and put in some additional information. Now, when I'm ready to, I can go and save this data, and this is allowing me to create that parent and child data relationship. So CapEx items, expenses details, purchase order details. We can put and store all of this sort of details. This sort of thing is incredibly difficult to do natively within SharePoint. So we've got that sort of additional capability. Notice how it's got the total going on. Notice how my request is now pending approval. So this will then start to show me and starting to initiate a workflow process. So if I move this browser across here, you'll see that I've gotten an email. So I'm logged in now as Megan, and it's saying that I've got a request to go and approve, and I can go and review it and sign it. So if I go as Megan and go and have a look at my CapEx requests, I can see that that request is there, and it's been able to reference the correct CapEx request in my email notification. So as Megan, I can go in and review this. And the important thing I want to show you here is this user sees an additional tab. So if you remember, when I come in as Adele here, I don't see that approval tab. But when I come in as Megan, I do see that. So we can control fields and tabs within our forms based on status, but also based on who the user is logged in. So I can go in and review that request. In this case, I'm actually enabled our signature capability. So I can come in here and sign it. I can add some comments. And if I wanted to, that request could go back to the user with those comments. And I'm going to go and save that request. And then in a minute, my request my workflow will complete, and it will go and set this status to be approved. There we go. So I've managed a very simple approval. In my case, I'm using signature. I could also be using tasks to manage that approval process as well. So let's look at a couple of elements around how this is built, and then we'll move on to a second example where we'll get a little bit deeper into actually building out some of these scenarios myself. So on the menu here, you'll see that the quiz apps are enabled. So this is for our collaboration products. And here you'll see a number of different features enabled. And you can, our products have different features attached to different SKUs, and they also, you can also control who has access within each SharePoint site to go and manage certain features and work with certain features. So let's start off with the form builder. So this is how we control the layout of that form, how we get that multi-tabbed experience. I'll show you what I mean. So it's how we get this really nice layout here. So how do we do that? Well, we go to our form builder, and in here we can add one or more tabs to our form. So I can go and add a new tab here. I can give it a name. And then in a particular tab, we have a grouped layout. Here you see I've got different columns on my form. I can add additional rows here, select which columns I want to include. And I can also have more than one column in on a specific row. So and I can also adjust the size of these, so I can decide the different layouts which I want as part of my design. So you see here I can build up a form with multiple rows and numbers of columns per row to create this more complex layout. What else can I do here? So I've got these different tabs. I can define things which are part on each tab. And I can also add conditions. So you'll see here that at the bottom, I've got a condition here. So if I want to control that it's only visible to a current user, or to if they're part of a specific group, I can control access in that way. And then in my case, I'm saying, well, only Megan can see this tab. And I'm also saying it will not appear when the status is equal to new. So I've got ability to control that visibility. What else can I do here? The second thing I can do is I can do that cascading lookup. So remember how we've got a list which has our departments on. And then we've also got a list which shows all of our cost centers as well. So let's look at how we can configure this experience so that when I go and create a new item here, I can select a specific department and then the options will be restricted. So I can do that using the cascading lookup column. So I've already configured this. So if I go and look at this column and we go and look at cost center, we can go and see which list it's looking at. We can go and see that the details should be filtered by department, where that matches the value of department on the form as well. So we can control that in as part of that setup to get this experience which we see here. Other capabilities which we've got within the product, we've got our repeating rows. So our repeating rows is where we can build this table of assets, lines, expenses, details, whatever information it is which you're collecting. So here I've got set up here where I can come in and I can define my repeating rows. And I've configured this already with my asset details. And I've defined what columns I want to collect. I've defined that I want to capture a total as well for this column. So you'll see that it totaled my items as it went through. And you can actually see what list this is submitting to. So it stores the associated items in a second list to create that parent and child relationship. So in this case, it's storing these in an assets list. And so here we've got a list of assets. And that is where it will be associated with a specific item so that those are linked and will be stored in that way. So that's how we go about creating a form like this. There are many other features and I'll touch on them briefly here, although I won't demonstrate them at this point. So other things which we can do. We can define column permissions. So that is the columns for the list, and if we need the date, data to hide certain fields based on certain rules. We've got column validation. So if we want to control a column and say that a column needs to have a specific format, a default value, or checking against something, we can do that with column validation. We can do conditional formatting to control the appearance of certain columns or rows when we look at the data in our list views. We've got some advanced specific columns like countdown column, file manager, external data column, and markup. That allows us to control and interact with in different ways, have a signature, connect to external data, manage files. We've talked about form builder. We've also got our default value capability so that we can set a certain field to have a default value. So in this case, I'm setting the request date column to automatically be today. You can set it to be based on a person or a more complex calculation. And we've got some other capabilities such as our print capability, adding recaptures. We talked about repeating rows, as well as controlling things like our permissions views and interacting with scanned items as part of our solution. Finally, we have the workflow logic. So you'll have noticed that emails got sent, statuses changed during the course of my item's life. This is what we can control with workflow. So think of things like approval, notifications, managing the status, creating tasks, doing other activities during the course of the life of that record, which is created by our form. That's what our workflow capability does. So in my case, it's got a trigger. It says only trigger if an item has been added or an item has been updated. We've got different types of triggers. So as well as automatic, it can be user driven. So a user needs to click a button to initiate the workflow. It can also be scheduled. So for example, that workflow can look across multiple items and see how, look for things which have a certain status and then perform a certain action. So that scheduled workflow might run on a daily basis or weekly basis to go and perform certain activities. Within my workflow, I'm build up different activity groups, and those activity groups can be based on conditions. So I've got my first activity group here, and it says if the status is equal to new, it's going to set a value. So to start with, it's going to set the title. You'll have noticed in our workflow that it went and set the title of my item. Yeah. Next, it goes and sets the status. So it will update the status to be whatever value I specify it to be. And then it will go and send an email. So in this case, sorry, it's the status it's going to do is going to set it to pending approval. So it said, go and set that to pending approval. And finally, it will send an email to the user telling them there's a CapEx approval and providing them with the detail of that CapEx approval. If it's not new, it will do something else. So in this case, if the status is pending approval and the value of approval is completed, so that signature which we saw has been completed, then I'm going to go and set the status. And in this case, I'm going to go and set the status to approved. It's quite a simple example, but it's how we can manage these multi-stage approval processes or multi-stage workflow processes to do different things at different points within the life of my item. So if you've ever used things like SharePoint workflows before or other third-party workflow solutions before, this will seem quite familiar to you. If not, this is somewhat new, but be reassured that you can manage these workflow solutions within our forms process, but that workflow is managed within SharePoint. Okay, let's move on to another example. So coming in here, I've got a new list here. It's called applications. Okay, so I'm managing some sort of application process. It might be a funding application, it might be a grant application, it might be a budgetary application, whatever you're looking to do. The thing which we've enabled here, and I've enabled here, is my external intake forms capabilities. So if I come into here, and then I open up our intake forms, this is where I can build one or more forms which I can share with people in a secure way, either via a web link or via a QR code, or as I said, embedding on a web portal for them to complete, and the data starts to flow into my SharePoint list. So this is my form itself. It's a fairly basic form. I've just designed a couple of fields into there. I'm not including all of my fields. You'll notice the status column has not been added. And I've added a couple of sort of nice sort of layout components. So for example, I could come and bring in a separator to control, like I want it separated and laid out in a certain way. I could, for instance, add like an accept terms field at the bottom and build this up in the way I wanted to. So let's say just okay, so I can build out this form exactly how I wanted it to. And then the form itself will come with some capabilities. I can embed that form, so it's got a link here for embedding that within a website if I want to. It's also got a URL. This is an externally facing URL, so I'm not making the whole of my SharePoint available externally. I'm just making this specific form available externally. I can come in here and I can start to complete my form. I can enter certain things. I can go and my date is automatically set to today. I can put in my funding amount, and I used that value before, so let's use a different one. And then I can come in and accept those terms if I wanted to, and submit my request. Now we might have other fields like the detail of the submission or other pieces of information which we're looking to try and capture. It's also worth saying, as well as being an external form with a link, we can also use that with a QR code as well. So if you want to mobile enable those forms, these will also be available on a mobile device for people to use, again, in a secure way. So if you were at an event, or if you wanted to make forms available around a building, for example. So say, for instance, there was someone needed to report a fault or a security issue or something else like that, you can do that. So I'll just load the app up this app on my phone, and then if I switch over to my mirroring here, you'll see that I get that same form, but in this case, it's available for me to complete externally here. And you'll notice things like the reCAPTCHA capability to make sure that we don't get spam submissions. What's really fantastic is if we come back and actually go back to my SharePoint site and load this SharePoint site, we'll see that these applications come directly into my SharePoint list. So I'll be able to feed in this data. I'm not having to rekey this data or anything else like that. And then that data can actually be used as part of my more complex internal forms and workflow logic. So let's have a look at building that element out as well. So here you can see I've got some details of my request, which has been submitted by that external person using those intake forms. Well, how can we actually enhance that form now it's been submitted into my Microsoft environment? Well, let's actually practically build this list out together and this form out together using some of the examples I previously showed you. So the first thing I want to do is I want to control the layout of my form. You'll notice at the moment I've got this data in, but it's not particularly easy to use and manage. So let's go and modify this form. And I'll click on our Quiz Apps link. And I'll look at loading the form builder. So what do I want to first of all capture? So let's say I want to give this a name. So let's name my first tab and call it applicant details. And then I'll come in here and I'll select my columns which I want to display here. So applicant name and their email address. And then I'll add another one which has got application details on, yeah. And I'll add another row in here for my submission date. It's quite a small amount of information, so I'll put that alongside my funding amount. And then I'll add a row here for my project description. So let's see what that looks like. And you can see that I'm building this out incredibly quickly. I've not had to write any scripts or do any sort of advanced customization. Immediately, we should see my form looks a lot better and a lot nicer. So let's take this record so we can see it with some data. So that's that external submission coming into my SharePoint environment. I can start to see this in a really nice, different layout here. I can actually add additional columns which are not part of the original submission. So I've got a status column here. I can add further columns if I want to. It's just a regular SharePoint list. So let's go and add that column in here. And we'll go to our forms builder and we'll come in and we'll add our status column. Okay, so now that column is part of my form and will be included. Okay, so I've got a status column here. Let's look at how we add some more capability. So I've got some additional lists here, very much like the CapEx approval I showed you previously. I've got one list which contains a list of departments. I've got another list which contains some cost centers. And I want, based on the departments selected, to only show the relevant cost centers. So if we're looking at community development, I only wanted to show these two cost centers. If we're looking at economic development, only these ones, etc. So let's go back to our list and let's add that capability. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a cascading lookup column. I don't have one already, so I'm going to create one first of all for department. It's going to be added to this list, and then I'm going to go and say, well, which list do I want to go and look at my department from? Department, and it's going to be the title column. Notice I can go and do that from other SharePoint sites if I want to, so really useful for managing sort of central data repositories as well. I don't want any filters here, so I'm just going to go and save this column. Next, I'm going to add a column for my cost center, and this one is going to have a filter associated with it. So I'm going to add a new column called cost center, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to select it from my list. I'm looking at the column called title, but I'm filtering it based on the column of department, where it matches department from my new list. And I want to set that as well. I need that one actually. So I'm just going to filter it by department and then filter it by department in my applications list. Then I'm going to go and save that. Now we set these two columns up, but we haven't yet added them to our form. So let's go and have a look at how we do that. So I'm going to come in here to my form builder, and I could add it to my application details tab, but I'm actually going to go and no, I think I'm going to put it on here. So I'm just going to go and add these columns here. So I'm going to go and say this needs to be department, and then I'm going to add another column for cost center. Cost center is quite a small column, so I'm going to make department a little bit bigger because there's more information in there. Let's have a look and see how that looks as we build this form out together. So returning into here and to go and either create a new, but I'll actually edit one of my external submissions. We can see the details here. We can see the application program. I'm going to go and set this as a new submission. And notice here, when I select the department, it will then present me with a filtered list of cost centers based on the options which I've provided. So I'm going to go and save this request now. So I've gone and enhanced my forms with the data provided from the application. What other things can I do? Well, external people are submitting some of this information. So they're submitting things like their name, their email address, some of these other columns. Probably don't want people to be able to edit these columns. So let's look at how we do that. So I can lock certain fields, either based on their state or based on something like another field, or even based on who's working with the form. So we can do things like set column permissions. So I'll only do this for one column just so that we can see. So we'll say email address. And in this case, we're going to say disable it, and we're going to disable it in the new and the edit form. That means someone can't change it at that point. And I'm going to go and save it. And then maybe I will want to hide or disable a column based on its status of the form. So let's go and do that example. So I'm going to add one to say disable the field in the new and the edit form if the status is equal to reviewed. Yeah. What that means is, actually, I didn't want to do that for email address. Let's change that because that's a bit of a duplicate. So let's pick a different column. So let's pick something like funding amount. So once I've reviewed it, I don't want people to be able to change the funding amount. So I'm going to come in here and and notice how you can do different forms. So for example, I could say, well, actually, it's only relevant when you're editing an item, not when you're creating an item. And I'm going to add that condition. So I'm going to say where the status is equal to reviewed, that column is not editable. Let's go and see a couple of those pieces in action. So let's go and edit my column, edit my record, sorry. And you'll see that I can't change email address. This is no longer an editable item. And at the moment, I can go in and change this funding amount, yeah? So I could go and say, actually, it's this much, yeah? The moment I change it to reviewed, this field is no longer editable. So the principle of controlling fields based on the status or the user who is filling in that form. Now, let's look at how we add some additional details to this form. So you might recall from my CAPIC example, we had that table of items, which we wanted people to add that additional detail to. I've got a list here within SharePoint, which has my budget items. So you see, I've got a number of fields here. I capture the description, the category, the amount, and I want to capture one or more items for my budget in my core applications form. So how do I do that? How do I create that table? Very complicated to do with native SharePoint. Can be done in a few seconds with our form. So we come in here and we look and add our repeating rows. I haven't got a column already, so I'm just going to create a new one called budget items. I go and look at a specific list. So in this case, budget items. I can say, how many rows do I want to display to people? They can add additional ones, but how many rows do I want to display to them for them to start to complete it? And then I can say, well, what do I want it to do? So in this case, I want it to display the description column, the category column, and the amount column. And I also want to have a total called total amount, which will be my total amount of my budget items. Yeah. And I'll go ahead and submit them. This is just configuring my form with this capability. Again, I need to manage my form itself and add that tab. So let's go and add that. And I'm going to add a new column, a new tab called budget items. And I'm going to add a column here called budget items. And I'm going to go ahead and save this. We go and have a look at our form now. You'll see that as I go in and edit it, I've got a new tab called budget items. And in here, I can go and start to fill items out. So I can say, it's equipment. So it's IT equipment. Let's add an amount, and then let's say sort of office supplies. And then finally, let's say sort of contractors. And I can start to build my form out with those additional fields of information. So I'm going to go and save this record, and we can start to build that out with additional columns of information. Finally, I want to show you how we can put a workflow on top of this. And I'll briefly talk about this because we're getting towards time. So say, for instance, I want to send an email notification when my workflow reaches my form reaches a certain state, or I want to update the status or change something based on certain conditions. I can do that. So let's go into workflow. And as I mentioned, there are 3 types of workflow. There's automatically triggered workflow, there's user triggered workflow, and there's scheduled workflow. So here I can go and create a new workflow. I can choose the type I want to do. And I'll create a user triggered one as a difference. So this is where someone will actually go and do something. You give the button a name, yeah? And then I can select what icon I want for my button. Let's see if we've got anything which looks like a document, for example. And then I'm going to go ahead and apply that. And then I could go and do some activities. So I firstly will add an activity group, and in there I can add conditions, but I can also insert some activities. I haven't got any already, so I can go and create one. I'll go and say send a notification. And I can go and define who this gets sent to. So I'll say it gets sent to Megan. And I'll need to get my email address. So let's grab my email address briefly. And so let's say it gets sent to Megan. And we can add things like tokens. So there's a lot of our columns are available. So I can say, take the applicant name. And that will sort of build up the workflow for me. And then I could also say that when, so I'll add this to my workflow, and then I'll add another activity, and we can go and create other activities to do things like change the status or other things like that. Now, as we're nearly at time, and I want to allow time for people to ask questions, I'll just go back and show you what this looks like on our form. So if I come in and edit this form now, I will actually see a button there saying, do you want to send this for approval? So we can deliver workflow activities to do things either automatically on a scheduled basis, or user driven to go and do certain things at certain points within the life cycle of our record. So hopefully that demonstration today and talking you through our forms has shown you a lot of our capability. It's shown you how our forms can enhance existing SharePoint lists with new column types like repeating rows, cascading lookups, default values. We can add column validation. We can lay those forms out with multi-tab forms with conditional logic based on statuses or based on the user logged in. We can also manage with workflows as well. So we can define notifications, we can change the status, we can create tasks, we can go and collect signatures from people. And finally, we can manage data collection all the way through the life cycle in a secure way. So you can either capture new items directly within SharePoint or external forms, feed that data into your workflow, allowing authorized users to update it at different stages. And hopefully that's given you a great idea. I've concentrated on a couple of examples of CapEx and budgetary applications and grant applications today, but there are many different use cases for any types of data collection and workflow within your environment. And if you're using SharePoint on premises or SharePoint online, then our forms application can help you with that. I've not kept a good monitoring of the chat, so I haven't seen if any questions have come in, but I'll ask Caroline to come back online and see if there are any questions for us.
Yes, thank you, Peter. Looks like we still have some time left to answer some questions, so feel free to submit any questions in the chat. But I do see, will the workflows work the same on SharePoint Subscription Edition?
Yes, absolutely. So our products are operate exactly the same across online and on premises. So SharePoint Subscription Edition, which I know many government clients are now using, there is a little bit more to install when you're installing it in your on-premises environment. There's a few additional components to install, but that's all documented and our team can walk you through the process of installing it, but the functionality is exactly the same.
Do the external forms work on mobiles?
Yes, absolutely. So hopefully you'll have seen in the demonstration today, I opened the form on my, I can't actually show you my actual phone, but I did show it to you on my app, which connects directly to my iPhone. So I scanned the QR code. You can go to a web address. I prefer this QR code for mobile devices because that allows you to put up QR codes around the building, at events, other things where you need to have people interacting with it. Even in external locations, people can scan that on their mobile phone very quickly, fill that data in, and then that will submit securely into your SharePoint environment.
Could the workflow be conditional to create approvals when the value is over a certain amount?
Yes, absolutely. So you'll have seen when we were creating, or hopefully you'll have seen when we were creating our activity groups, that you could apply conditions to those activity groups. Those conditions can be based on different things. So it could be based on status, but it could also be based on a value. So that's a common one we do with our customers, where if a request, if an expenses approval, if a CapEx approval, if a budgetary application, if a grants application is a travel request is over a certain value, then it needs to go to an additional person for approval. It needs to go to a senior manager, a director, whoever that might be, to complete that additional approval stage. So you can build multi-stage workflows and have different conditions, including based on amounts.